Welcome to the Fit for Halter podcast. We're here to bring practical content and community to the amateur halter exhibitor. I'm your host, Amy Zabel, and I interview people from across the halter horse industry. We'll learn new techniques, hear about the hottest products, and get to know one another. If you grow in your knowledge and we gain more exhibitors in the ring, this has been a success. It's a laid-back environment. Prepare to be inspired and maybe take some notes. Welcome to a listener-requested episode of Fit for Halter podcast. In this episode, we're going to discuss fitting halter horses during cold weather, freezing weather, some blanketing suggestions, and using lights. So join me in welcoming Erin Henderson. She and her husband, Matt, are the owners and trainers at Turner-Henderson Show Horses located in Albany, Oregon, and Warren English, owner of English Quarter Horse Farms. He's an amateur halter exhibitor from Sturgis, Michigan. So thanks to both of you for being here.
Absolutely.
For sure. Glad to be here.
So we'll kick off this episode with some introductions. Would you just start, each of you, by telling us about your halter horse journey and then your current operation?
So who would you like first?
Either one. How about ladies first? Erin, you want to jump in?
Sure. My husband and I'm Erin. My husband's name is Matt, and we are Turner-Henderson Show Horses, and we are located in Albany, Oregon. We have been training and fitting halter horses since 2007 when we gave up our amateur cards. My husband first in 2009 and started training in 2010, and I followed in 2014. And we crossed the 100 world champion mark this year, and so we're pretty excited.
Awesome. And Warren?
And my name's Warren English, and I am an amateur exhibitor that owns my own farm and has some breeding stock. And my wife and I, Lori, have been doing it for about 9 years in the halter industry and about 27 years overall. Started in horses when my daughter was 7 and had to have a walk trotter, and we've basically followed that path to where we are today, which is showing halter horses.
Awesome. And both of you are at the World Show this week.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, we are.
So thank you. Thank you for fitting in this episode and recording and conversation while you're in the midst of a dozen other things or more. So thank you.
No problem.
Absolutely.
So you both live in northern climates where you get some pretty cold weather. Let's just start off with, when you think about individual horses, whether it's a show horse, broodmare, how do you decide whether to blanket or not blanket and let a horse grow like a natural winter coat? What goes into that decision for you?
I think the biggest deciding factor is how quickly you want to get to the show pen. Do you have time to let them hair up? Is it important to keep a hair coat? Because for me, it takes about 60 days to turn a hair coat around unless you want to grab some body clippers and clip that. But
yeah,
I try my best to avoid that. Of course, it's not always a guarantee, but if you can, at all costs, scrub and turn a hair coat around in about 60 days.
Gotcha.
For us, it kind of depends on, it really depends on the horse. A lot of our older horses, a lot of our brood mares, they've kind of gotten away from the growing hair stage. I've got probably, I'd say half my brood mares won't grow a hair coat, but with them, obviously it's not that big an issue. With the show horses, we try and watch them. Depends on what they're going to be doing. We kind of schedule them out ahead. I personally have no problem with them growing hair. We do body clip, and if we need to, I think it's healthy for especially the weanlings to grow a hair coat out. If I want to keep them short and tight, we keep lights on them. We make sure that they're blanketed. We usually start looking at show horses that are going to show in January, February, March. when them barns get to about 65, they usually have sheets, and then progressively getting more. And our barns are always heated, so we rarely get below 60 degrees.
Sounds fantastic. We live in the north as well and don't have any insulation. So, yeah, it's good information. So we'll get into some of the details about temps and kind of deciding factors. As far as blanketing is concerned, you touched on it a little bit, Warren, but at what temperature do you begin sheets or blankets? Do you have like some bars where you are a sheet at this temp and you move to a light or a midweight or a heavy? Tell us a little bit about how each of you do or decide what's going to go on the horse at what temp.
So for me, we start putting sheets on at about 65 degrees. And then again, depends on the horse. I do have horses that once they get to the 60s, we got to go to a heavier sheet or a heavier blanket. But for the most part, that's pretty much where we're at. Again, the barns are all heated. And then, when you have 14 head in a barn, they'll keep the barn at around 55, 60 anyway, if it's insulated. So, we try and keep it in that range. When we get the really super cold weather below zero, then, barns struggle to stay in that range, and then we'll add blankets as we need them. And we're not afraid to put a sheet with a blanket and another sheet on them. We don't usually use any neck blankets, mainly because, especially on the show horses, they can wear their manes out. It just doesn't work real well for us. So we just keep their bodies covered and warm as we can, and keep an eye on them.
Yeah.
In our program, we don't have an insulated barn. Our show barn is not in the elements, but isn't heated, and so we use blankets and sheets and neck warmers in order to keep a hair coat. And I'm with Warren, about 65 you start looking at blankets. I mean, some horses obviously run a little warmer, and so it all depends on that. But you start a sheet, and then a midweight about 55 degrees, that, and then about 50 to so you start pulling out a heavy, and then anything below that I grab a neck warmer, and then anything below 40 you grab a sheet and put it under the heavy, and then a neck warmer. And then if it gets colder than that, you can even use a sleazy under that as well, and button up. On the way down here, when we laid over in Moab, it was 28 degrees when we woke up, and it was chilly. And putting one horse on that trailer at a time, I'm used to having 8 horses on, but coming out here we had one on the trailer by himself, and so he got to leave Moab wearing a heavy and a sheet layered with a sleazy underneath of it, just so that he kept that tight hair coat on the way out here, because he was a little chilly, or was gonna be chilly, but we layered him up. So it's just keeping that hair coat tight.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a dramatic shift from 28 to your temps in
Absolutely.
Oklahoma City. So how can you tell if a horse is too warm?
I usually check them we check them in the day, during the day, we check them at night. I usually, all you gotta do is stick your hand underneath them, and I don't like them sweating. I try and keep them to where they don't sweat, but they're reasonably warm. And it's kind of like feeling the temperature on your kid. You don't need a thermometer. You just kind of feel their forehead. That's kind of the way I feel it. They're a little warmer than you are. So as long as when I'm touching them, they're about in that 100-degree range, 99 range, I'm good. If they're really sweating, then, if we've got heavies on them, we'll pull the heavies off and go to just sheets. I don't like to, especially at night, I really don't like taking blankets off them if they're sweating completely. So, we'll always put like a super light sheet or a fly sheet or something on to keep them to have something on.
Absolutely. For me, if one's starting to get a little warm, you can watch them get a little antsy, start rubbing on the stall wall. They start kicking a little bit. You can just tell they get a little uncomfortable, about like a person when they start getting warm, they just start squirming a little bit. You can tell they start circling their stalls. They're not comfortable. You can tell something's up. Their personalities, they'll let you know.
That's a good indicator of comfort or discomfort for that matter. So then let's talk a little bit about fitting a blanket. How do you decide when a blanket fits well, and what are some of the risks or things for people to watch for if a blanket doesn't fit too well, if it's too big, too small, straps, etc.?
Would you like? All right, I'll keep going. How's that? All right, I'll keep going first, and then you will switch whatever. But when I fit a blanket, I try and make sure that they've got enough room in the chest and the neck, especially with a sheet. I tend to be a little on the big side. I don't like them rubbing, especially if they're in show season. However, you do want them big enough that you don't want them too big. And I'll take a look at where the straps come in. If it's, obviously below their hock, that's a big problem. You can adjust them up. I don't like them tight because when they lay down, you want to make sure they have enough room to get up. However, I usually have about an inch drop in the band in between. So once I hook them up, they got a little bit of looseness to them. I like it covering their butt. I like it coming down over their hip. A lot of times I'll see guys with sheets where they're 6-8 inches ahead of their tail dock, and that's obviously too small of a sheet. So, but again, they don't look sloppy. They should be snug, and they don't move around too much. But you also, like you said, you got to give them a little bit of slack in there, because you don't want them too tight where they get hung up when they're on the ground.
Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely. I find that I like the ones with the adjustable front, with these halter horses that tend to be a little bit wider. The ones with the closed front just seem to be a little too snug on their shoulders. I personally like my straps to be crisscrossed in the back, especially on the younger ones, when they're learning to wear a sheet or whatever you're teaching yours to wear. The crisscross straps kind of tends to keep that sheet or blanket in the middle of their back. And these halter horses with the slick hair coats, they can kind of move all over. So I have mine crisscrossed, and I prefer a single belly band or a single strap. I don't like a belly band. I don't like crisscross straps either. Too many straps, more legs you can get in the wrong places, kind of a deal. So either crisscrossed or on ones that either when you're going to go around, you go up and under and you go back through on one. But yeah, I'm with Warren. You don't want those straps too long. You don't want them too tight either, but you want them snug enough that they're not going to get their back leg up under and have a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What are some of your preferred features on a blanket?
I like a wither pad, a little bit of a fleece wither, because that's where a lot of the rubbing goes on. As Erin said, I really like the buckled fronts. That way you have the ability to expand and contract them when you want. I'm not in sheets. I like light sheets. I don't like really heavy sheets. I've had issues. I like them to be able to rip if they've got to rip. And sometimes, some of these new sheets are such strong fabric that, you can hang them up on stuff. And you never like to rip a sheet, but I'd much rather rip a sheet than hurt the horse. So I've been kind of shying away from the really heavy duty sheet material that they're using. Other than that, that's basically what I look for, in a sheet.
Okay.
I don't know about you, Warren, but those thicker ones, they kind of don't breathe. They almost like sweat underneath of them.
I agree. Yeah,
They,
no doubt.
I mean, I have some horses that can be a little bit of a tail rubber. So sometimes I do like a tail flap. It depends. I don't love a tail flap, but they do have their purpose on an occasional one that maybe is your tail rubber kind of a deal. Open or adjustable strap. Like I said before, I don't like too many leg straps. 3 is about my limit. I do like, if you are gonna, in our area, because we don't have the heated barns, the built-in neck warmer on some of the super heavy ones is nice for the fact of it's all in one. They are not super fun to launder though. You have to have a real big wash machine, especially when you got these size 86 horses that, it becomes fair to wash. But I do really enjoy those ones because it's you're not fighting having to chase a neck warmer around at the same time. But I do like that. It seems like you can peel off that layer and then still have a sheet underneath when you're going to work them. And then the less that they see the cold and the extreme change in temperatures, where you keep these horses warm is important.
Yeah. What about taking care of their skin, especially in your colder climates? Is there anything that you do to take care of their skin or keep the hair itself in good condition throughout the winter?
We use rose oil spray, and then we also have oil supplements. DAC's got a real nice supplement. Platinum's got a real nice oil supplement. We usually, even our horses that were, given a rest for 6, 8 months, we usually keep them on some kind of oil, take care of hair coat, which obviously then translates to hoofs and all of that. So, like you said, we use in between, we try and wash them in the winter time. Again, we're in a heated barn, so we wash them about once a week, and then rose oil them. That's just like a hair conditioner. And like you said, we use the DAC oil, the platinum omega-3 oils to keep their skins as supple as we can. One of the problems with the heated barn is that you have a tendency of drying them out. So, we definitely keep them on an oil supplement all the way through the winter.
Okay.
Yes, keeping some sort of oil, a spray, rose oil is great, a show sheen, anything like that that's going to keep that skin hydrated. Daily quick scrub down and a vacuum to get that dirt, and even just the daily scrub helps that oil to stay in there. And I prefer nylon sheets. I know some people are cotton, but I think that draws out the oils that are naturally in the skin. And those nylon really help to keep that in there to where you're not sucking that out, and you're able to keep that skin hydrated.
Okay.
Yep.
So shifting a little bit to using lights in your barn, tell us about how you use them. And then in general, do you find that it works? What are a few basic guidelines? And I think you mentioned, Erin, about 60 days that you allow for turning a coat around. Just talk about your light program and how long does it potentially take to make a difference?
Absolutely. So on average, you'll see for us, it's about a 60-day turnaround from a hair coat on one from a blank slate or coming in to start with. For us, we have our automatic light system. We turn ours on it comes on at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we use fluorescent lights. I tell everybody, or recommend to everybody, that you be able to read a newspaper from all 4 corners of your stall. Then ours stay on until 11 o'clock at night. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can go to Home Depot and you can get yourself little small light timers. Nothing fancy. Like ours obviously is up on the wall, built in, but it doesn't take much. Just one that does the deal. But
Okay.
you can get as fancy as you want, and you can get as basic and or you can be as dedicated to go out and unplug and plug in as you want to. But it's nice that way you're able to go to bed at a decent hour and not have to wake up at dark 30 to make sure it is, because we want to resemble the sunlight during the summer is what we're trying to achieve, to where we trick these horses' brains into thinking that it's summertime and they need to be shedded off and have that tight hair coat. That's what we're trying to achieve.
Okay.
Erin, if you would like to show an amateur select showmanship, you need to get checked in, please.
That's right. Get to the ring, people.
That's right.
What about you, Warren? Tell us about your life.
Well, it's fun because obviously Erin's from the West Coast, so we're from the East Coast. So same theory, but times are different. We start at 6 a.m., shut off at 10. During the summer, that's it's usually dark by about 9:15 and usually light by about 5:45. We great rule of thumb as far as reading in all corners of the stall. That's that you got enough light. We use LED grow lights from Hyponic Growth people. I use LEDs almost exclusively just because of the cost of electricity. Up by us, it's so expensive that LED lights really do make a big difference as far as cost savings go. And then we keep the brood mares and the current showing horses on that light program. If I've got, like right now, I'm rehabbing a yearling. Anybody that I'm rehabbing, anybody that isn't going to be a show horse this next year, we don't keep lights on. I prefer for them to grow hair coats. I prefer them to be hairy. If they start to look like they're doing well, we'll go ahead and, like you say, about 60 days to get them, down to a reasonable slick coat. And then, like you said, it's not unusual, especially with the weanlings, that no matter how hard we try and no matter how our lighting is, we still got to body clip them. So, that's always the last resort. But, if we've got a show coming up, we'll do what we need to do to make them look good. And that's about it. Like you said, we have all ours on regular timers because you're right. Nothing worse than getting up at 5 a.m. and running out to the barn, turn all the lights on. So, it works out well to do that, obviously. And then, like you said, we just have simple screw-in LEDs. We put them in all corners of the stalls, and making sure that all your wiring's up above everything that they can get to. So that's pretty much how we handle lights. We do our brood mares outside. We leave our brood mares outside until it's 10 above. So we have LED street lights out in the outside pens, and those go on same way, 6 a.m. and off at 10 p.m.
Wow. There's a lot of light going on at your place.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It looks, actually, I went over and talked to my neighbor who's actually way far away, but I told him, I said, what I was doing, and I tipped the lights down so I wasn't lighting up the whole back 20 acres. He said he appreciated that, but yeah, that you do have to be conscious, especially outside lighting. I try and aim everything down so that I'm not shining in somebody's backyard,
Yeah. And play football in your
Oh yeah,
pasture.
Yeah. Well,
perfect,
I don't know.
Perfect.
It'd be have a little bit too much manure probably for football, but
This is true. Oh, I
give them a
love it.
soft landing.
That's right. This is true. What about at horse shows? Do you take lights to horse shows?
We do. We pack our own lights with us in the same setup as we do at home. They run on a timer, and ours are little Craftsman lights that they look like a laptop, and it actually LEDs. They work very well for us. I forget what the lumens are. It's bright. They're very bright. But yeah, they're all hooked up to a timer, and they come on and they go off, and yeah, it works great. I try to replicate the same thing that's home as it is at the horse show. Of course, if you're going to go there and you're going to jump off the trailer and be there for less than 24 hours, I don't at that point. But if you're going to be there for a couple days, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and Tom Robertson's my trainer, and he is a big guy. He lights everything, and he has lights set up. You could it's almost like a dental exam. It's you walk down his aisle, it's like you're walking down in a Hollywood premiere. But yeah, everywhere we go, and he does it. He never lets them not have light. Because it's weird. Some of them it doesn't affect, but every once in a while you get a horse that even just one night of darkness that throws them off, and they're growing a haircut. So, we try anywhere we go. He has lights up and running.
Absolutely.
Good
It can be the
stuff.
smallest of things that if you skip a month
Oh,
of warmer to the smallest thing that will cause these guys to grow a hair coat. And hair coat is very key in what we do. I mean, we all work hard to get these muscles and our horses fit, and that hair coat is a make or break. And it's, the smallest of things of keeping your horses warm or cool. I mean, a fan is just as important as a blanket is. And
yep.
And the lights, it's the final touches that make these horses the winners.
Yeah.
So true.
That's good. Thank you for our folks, our listeners who maybe don't have a trainer or don't have, access to insulated barn. I think it'll be really helpful for people. So in looking at just general care for the horse over the winter, do you see the cold weather making an impact on overall health or even things like their metabolism?
I think that in the cold weather, as in the hot weather, you always want them drinking, and in the cold weather, a lot of times they'll slow up with that. So it's not unusual for us to make sure that they have salt licks in there, and that kind of stuff. We have automatic waterers, but in the wintertime, especially on certain horses, we'll shut them off and bucket feed them water just to keep track of how much they're taking. As far as metabolism goes, for our brood mares, we're asking them to, start to come into season very early. I mean, February is very early for horses. They don't usually like it. So, all of those things, both feeding them, keeping them warm, keeping lights on them, all impacts how easy it is for us to be able to get them ready to start having babies.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, our show horses, I don't see a change that dramatically in what I do temperature wise. That way, I mean, your everyday horse that's outside is, I see more of a change that way from them trying to keep warm and utilizing their feed that way. But I don't see it, so to speak, on the show horses side of things.
Okay. What about your feeding routine in the winter? Let's just say that we're referring to our show horses, the horse that either is on a short break for the winter or is showing throughout the winter season. What kind of changes do you make to your feeding routine?
So for me personally, our horses stay on the same routine from point A to point B, whether it's they're showing or not.
Okay.
But what changes is their diet, their calorie intake, or whether I'm pushing to make a big show or just trying to get them qualified. Their calorie intake might change, and I don't got to push them that hard. Or I mean, this might be, I'm not pushing, so I need to cut their calories, either that or they will get a little plumpy, and I don't want that. And you don't work them near as hard as when they're in the off season, so to speak. So you don't have to feed them near as many calories.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We have a tendency with ours, especially our 2 and 3 year olds and our age mares, we like to strip some weight off them. So we'll drop their calorie intake, not dramatically, but significantly. We like to get the weight off them. It kind of gives them a little bit of a rest time. We don't change a whole lot. I mean, they still work the amount that they do. Again, something that Tom does for me. But when usually like after the World Show, we'll kind of, slow them up, cut them back on calories, cut them back on work for a little bit, let them lose a little bit of weight, let them relax a little bit and enjoy their life. And then, depending on what we're doing with them, starting in January, mid-January, we'll start back in and, start, increasing calories and working them. And pretty much, once we're in show season, which, can be mid-January, I mean, they're getting what they should be getting. And as far as calories go, and they're getting what they should be getting as far as working goes, and we're out showing. Again, like you said, I've sometimes we'll have a horse like right now. I've got a yearling that's going to be in rehab for the year. Obviously, that's a completely different thing. But for our show horses, we like to give them a little bit of time, 45, 30, 45 days, where we're kind of trying to run maybe 50, 100 pounds off them and just kind of let them chill out and enjoy life for a little bit.
Okay. Any special considerations, either traveling for a horse show or, you buy or sell a horse, any special considerations when you're making a pretty dramatic shift in the climate? For example, Erin, you mentioned 28 degrees on your way down to the World Show. What kinds of things come to your mind when you're transitioning from either hot to cold or vice versa?
So for me, when you're bringing one from, the cold to the hot, you ask them if is it important or it's super important, does the horse sweat? You want to make sure that horse sweats, or that can be a big health risk, or down, something you need to watch. If not, and then also going from, hot to cold, that's a little easier to manage. You can bundle up if that is. But for us, I mean, we if it's cold, we leave the barn in their sheets on the trailer. And I mean, I've many a times I've jumped in through the trailer window, and you're peeling sheets when you're halfway down the road. And you just gotta do what you gotta do to keep them comfortable and not grow that hair coat. But you're doing what you gotta do.
Yeah.
So with us, and I'm a little different than most. I'm very aware of horses that are from warm areas and coming up to me. A lot of times that'll have an impact on whether I even buy a horse, especially like a broodmare or even an older show horse. If they've been down in Texas their whole life, I really got to think about whether I want to bring them all the way up and keep them in the cold.
They don't weather well.
No, they don't. And I agree with Erin. I mean, it's easier for them to go from hot to cold. I've had a lot of problems with horses that have been raised and live in the cold, going down to Texas where it's 100 degrees, 120 degrees, and they don't do well down there, And so I'm always aware of how long the horse has been in a climate, and that's part of my decision process about whether I buy them or not, and where they're at and what they're used to. Because, if they're from Houston, Dallas area, and they're used to living down there, it's a big transition coming to 10 degrees above zero, and vice versa. So I do keep track of that. With us, one of the things that we have is all of our trailers are insulated, which, works both not only in the cold weather, but also in the hot weather. It does have a tendency of, being able to keep them more comfortable. We have cameras in all of our trailers, and I also have thermometers so we can keep track of what the heat in the trailers are, because I do worry about that coming down from our place down to Texas or Oklahoma City, because you get stuck in a traffic jam and it can get 100 degrees in there pretty quick.
Absolutely.
So
I'm with you.
but that's kind of the stuff that we do.
Absolutely. The temperature gauge inside the trailer, that's huge. I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
One.
Okay. So if you are driving down the road and you have the temperature gauge and it's 100 degrees, what are some of the things that you're thinking about doing right away if you can just pull over? What are some of the things that you're thinking about doing right away?
So ours have water buckets hung in front of them at all times. We offer them fresh water, especially when it's hot outside. That is super important for us, keeping those horses hydrated, drinking, at least offering it to them. They say you can't lead a horse to water or make them drink, but yes. Having it there, keeping water that they're at least leaving the house with water that they're used to. And that is important for us.
Okay.
Yeah, we have water tanks in our trailers, and we offer them water about every 2.5 hours, 3 hours. We check on them. With us, the venting, ceiling, roof vents open, all of the gates open. We don't let them stick their heads out or anything like that. We put the bars up, but pretty much once you're going down the road, even on a 100-degree day, we can get that trailer into the high 70s pretty easily just with airflow, and it even, 78, 79, 80 degrees, that's still, as long as they can get their nose in the window and get some fresh air, that usually is enough to keep them, happy. I know I don't do it and Tom doesn't do it, but I've got friends of mine that actually they clear the floor and they'll put 80-pound bag of ice down on the floor under each belly and then cover it with about 6 inches of bedding. And they claim that keeps that about another 10 degrees cooler. So again, I've never done that, but I know guys that do a lot of shipping down into Arizona and New Mexico, and they claim that it does keep that trailer a lot cooler.
Absolutely. We do a lot of night hauling. If we're headed to a big show, we'll look at the temperature, and depending on if it's cold out, we'll make a day trip. If it's hot out, we'll make a night trip. It's just being flexible and adjusting to whatever's the best for those horses.
You bet. Good point.
So shifting to winter workouts, thinking about working horses, do you make any adjustments to your workout routines in the winter or below certain temperatures? Let's flip a coin.
Who's up?
Well, yeah, I don't know. Hey, why don't you do this, Amy? Why don't you tell us which one of us you want to answer first?
Sure.
That way we're not sitting there kind of pregnant pausing it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Erin, you can go ahead.
Okay, for us, we don't have an exact number that we say at 28 degrees we're no longer working horses. It kind of depends on the feel. For me, I don't warm up my horses anymore. I make sure, they're bundled up, they're warm. But what I do is I don't let them cool out we have a Eurosizer. And so, or if I'm golf carting that day, or ponying that day, I get them back to the stall and get them covered up and warm. I don't let them cool, out, so to speak, on the Eurosizer or whatnot, out in the cooler temperatures. We have an indoor arena. So during the real cold temperatures, it's still, not super, super cold, but, we do that where, you take them from inside the barn and you work them and you get them covered right back up, to where they're not getting cold before they go to work, and get them bundled right back up.
Okay.
I work in a cooler, either one that's going to wick off the sweat that they might get underneath of them when they are working, or a nice fluffy cooler that is going to help keep them warm. But I personally, once the ground is frozen, if my indoor arena is ground hard frozen, we don't work. But for me, it's, 28 degrees. If I'm super cold, I don't want to work. So that's my rule of thumb. No, not really.
What about you, Warren?
We work, we have a panel walker indoor, we have an indoor arena. Most all of my footing is either synthetic or sand, so we don't really have a problem so much with frozen ground. So we will work them, pretty much as cold as it can get, as long because there's transitions between each of those buildings in their stall building. I think Erin hit it on the head. You don't really ever want them getting cooled down. I mean, if once you get them working, get them done, then get them back in the barn and, rinse them off, whatever you do. Again, we're in a heated barn, so, we rinse them off and then we put a cooler on them, let them dry out. But as far as work goes, it's actually more the people that are working them. My barn manager, Crystal, is the one that does it. And, when I start seeing her look like an Eskimo, it's like, you might want to take off a day or two. You don't need to be working these horses when it's that cold. So it's more the employees and ourselves, as much cold as we can put up with. And then after that, it just, we don't work them as hard in the cold, but we do try and, work them a bit. And then, like you said, as Erin said, do not let them sit and cool off when it's really cold outside. Get them right back in and get them transition back into the barn and the warmth of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, what about neck sweats? Do either of you utilize neck sweats in the winter and then experience, or are you able to get as much sweat going as you might in the summer? What about you, Erin?
So absolutely. I mean, we do our best to try to get them sweated as often as possible in the cold, but it's not a deal breaker for me. Of course, they're not going to sweat as great. A sweating, if you're trying to make a year-end horse show and you got one, you're trying to make honor roll with it or win the honor roll. You're trying to keep that neck in line. Where there's sweating agents that we'll use in order to be able to really get a good sweat on one. Trash bags, layer those sweats, neck warmer over top of it. I mean, there's always a way to get them to sweat. But it's not a must. I'd rather just be able to keep them in line. And if you're able to keep them warm, I'd rather get them worked and then get them covered back up than to get them sweaty. And if you're not able to wash one and rinse one without getting them sick or get them cooled off properly, if you're in a super cold climate, it's not a deal breaker to wait until the weather's warmed up just a little bit in order to where you're not risking losing a hair coat or the horse getting sick.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about you, Warren?
Every horse is different on neck sweats. We sweat them regularly. And again, I want to reiterate, when I say this, I'm talking about my barn. My barn is heated. So, when we're talking about washing horses and letting them dry, they're in 60, 65 degree barns, if not warmer. So, I'm a little different in that regard. Certainly if I was in a barn that had no insulation, no heat, I agree with Erin. I wouldn't be that worried about sweating them. I'd be more concerned about keeping them covered up and warm and stuff like that. Again, depending what you're doing with them. I mean, if you've got shows that are in January and February and you got a horse that has to be sweated, then you got to do what you got to do. But, for the most part, if they don't have to be sweated, and I had a choice, I wouldn't be sweating them if I was, keeping them wrapped up, keeping them warm and stuff for the show. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about just general cold weather and the impact that it has on their joints or muscles? How do you, or do you, are there special considerations that you take to keep them loosened up, to keep them warmed up prior to a workout? What do you think, Warren?
For me, obviously we wrap them. We use shoe protectors just because, we don't want to lose shoes. The big thing that I think we do, we just walk them initially. Basically what we do is we spend probably a third of our workout just walking, especially when it's really cold, just to get them loosened up, make sure that they're not stiff. I hate when, we take a horse and they just start galloping at full speed. That's always a recipe for disaster. So usually what Crystal and the girls will do at the barn is they'll hand walk them. They'll hand walk them for about 3 minutes, 5 minutes before they start doing any work with them, just making sure that they're loosened up and, make sure there's nothing funny about it, make sure there's nothing hurting them or anything like that. And that 3 to 5 minutes is enough that, they're maybe not, I don't know if it'd take all the steam out of them, but, it kind of prepares them so they're not just going ballistic off of the pony cart or off of the golf cart or off of a lunge line or off the walker. So
What about you, Erin?
So our Eurosizer program is programmed to walk for an initial amount of time before we start. And that's super important to see if there's anybody lame, get everybody all headed in the right direction and warm up a little bit, loosen up those joints. I don't see typically one that, we're not dealing with arthritic horses quite yet, not the younger ones. When halter horses we don't see arthritic horses to where they're working out of being arthritic in their joints and that sort of thing. Maybe in the performance side where you're dealing with older horses, that could be an issue. But with the younger halter horses, no, they're more fresh and they're wanting to bounce around and be silly. So for us, walking and getting them kind of all headed in the right direction, and like Warren said, getting their little bit of steam off before they start their workout, and that sort of thing. But yeah, getting a little bit of a nice walk, get some warmed up and started off right. And I finish my workout on the Eurosizer with another walk before they are off. And so it's like 2 minutes long, and that just keeps them walking while you're unloading the walker and putting other ones on. And that's just how we do it.
Okay. So we talked about this a little bit already, but can you lay it out for us again? What kind of care do you take after you've done a workout and it's cold outside? So, Erin, we'll start with you. Just lay that out for us again. You've completed the workout. You take them off the walker or whatever tool you're using to do the workout. What happens as you're walking them back towards the stalls, cross ties, what have you? What's happening for you?
So for me, when my horse has completed its workout, I'm with Warren. All my horses wear leg wraps or bell boots if they've got shoes on. So they stop at our little leg station, as we call it, and they get debooted and de-wrapped, and then they get put in their stalls to hang tied for a good amount of time. And for us, we keep them in their coolers till they kind of stop steaming. The cooler wicks off that extra heat that they've created, and then you bundle them back up into their heavy blankets with their neck warmers. That's when it's significantly cold outside. If it's like 60, then I take their sheets off. I let them work naked, because they're not going to grow a hair coat at 60 on the walker or even 50, and they work naked. And then I put them back in the barn and they put their sheet back on, just enough to keep them warm. And that.
Okay. What about you, Warren?
After we're done working, we'll bring them in. We put them on the wash rack, take their wraps off, take their bell boots off. big believer in washing from their knees down. That comes from the performance. I had a horse that got scratches one time, and it took me forever to get rid of them. And so that's one of our things. We just we hit them with a little antibacterial soap from the knees down and rinse them. Depending on when they've had their last bath, we'll curry them, brush them, and then sheet them or blanket them and put them back in their stall. I usually, after workout, I tie them to the stall for 20 minutes, a half hour, just to let them chill out. Some of them will have a tendency of wanting to go haywire into their hay and just eating and drinking. And I kind of want to let them, relax a little bit and that kind of stuff. And then, like you said, depending on how cold it is, we will either vacuum them or we'll wash them down, and then let them dry with a cotton cooler and tied up to their wall until they're dry. And then, we'll pull off that and, put the sheet on. And, basically, we try and, just kind of, make sure they're comfortable and make sure they're not too sweaty. We want them to work, but we don't want them just wringing wet either. So, we do work them without any of their sheets or blankets on, unless it's super cold. If it's, below zero, we might work them with a sheet. But I've always been a little leery that those straps are always something that just, make me nervous. Maybe it's because I've had horses hurt that way. And then once it happens and it's a once in a million thing, then you automatically think it's going to happen again. So you're leery of it. So we usually work them, without anything on them, unless it's super cold.
Okay. All right. So last question. When you think about weanlings or babies versus a more mature horse, are there any shifts that you make in your routine based on age? Let's hear from Erin.
So for us, they're obviously becoming weanlings, yearlings when it's super cold out. And I think they're actually kind of resilient. I mean, I'm more so to speak after they've maybe been on our program during the fall futurities. You keep them bundled up. For me, I don't like to we've shaved all their hair off, so I don't want to just turn them cold turkey out and dramatically shock them that way. I want them to grow a little bit of a hair coat if I'm going to turn one out or let them have some time off. I want them to grow a little bit of hair. I don't want them just to be turned dried out. That's mean. I don't like being cold. I feel if I'm cold and I want to be wrapped up, my horse should be too. So that's kind of my rule of thumb. If I'm cold, the horse needs to have a sheet or a heavy on. If I'm bundled up in my coveralls to go to work, they better darn sure have a sheet and a heavy on, because that's just me. The more layered I'm in, my horses too.
What about you, Warren?
That is so, Erin hit it right on the head. That's the one thing I tell all the girls at the barn. It's like, hey, if you've got a heavy coat on and sweaters and hats and everything else, by golly, you better make sure that the horses have it, because they're as cold as you are. So that's a great rule of thumb. Our babies, they're on their mamas with the real babies. So, we might have a light sheet on them, but beyond that, mama usually takes care of them pretty well. And we're not usually weaning until late May, early June. So once we're in that time frame, they're pretty much self-sufficient. I agree with Erin. We don't. They can grow a little bit of hair. I probably body clip about half of my weanlings, and I don't really get real super worried about it, mainly because if you start putting lots of blankets and sheets on a baby, it just seems like they get it themselves into trouble. Most of them, have a tendency of getting themselves cast pretty easily. And I don't like having to mess around with sheets and blankets and all that when we're trying to deal with that. So, once they get off their mama's side, it's usually warm enough that it's not a big deal to us.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think we've pretty well covered this topic, and I hope for our listeners who are new to the, show horse journey in the winter, or people who live in our warmer climate or colder climates, that I think you've provided a lot of great information. So thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time, especially while you're at the World Show, just doing your thing, showing horses. Wish both of you the best of luck and safe travels back home.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Yes, thank you for all you do with this, for all the education for everybody. And it's always fun, even from a professional standpoint, to hear what everybody has to say.
You bet.
I agree. Well, thanks to both of you. Hey, if you're an amateur or a professional willing to share your story or bring content that helps us with our halter horses, you can email me at fitforhalter@gmail.com.